The thresholds that have been set for these steps, they're quite high to reach or low numbers. Is that a sort of admission that contact tracing is not up to scratch for higher numbers to manage this when we open back up?
Well, why don't we both do it? I'm happy to do it. And if I can just go back to, very quickly, the issue of regional Victoria and why there weren't 10 different zones across regional Victoria, for instance. If regional Victoria getting to that 5 or less cases on a 14-day average was 6 or 8 weeks away, then absolutely. You would have perhaps taken a whole lot of smaller communities that, to the best of our knowledge, haven't had a case or don't have one now. But given that regional Victoria is likely in just a few weeks to get to that threshold, then we think one set of rules, one setting across regional Victoria is better than having almost an endless number. On the issue of how low the numbers need to be, it's not a function. It is not a reflection on those matters. It is absolutely an acknowledgement that this is wildly infectious, and you just imagine this for a moment. So you bump that threshold up to 10 or 15 cases, and because that'll get us there quicker, and then literally moments later, the case numbers start to tick up. No matter how. Well, but Rich, you can't. I've seen this comparison quite a bit, and it's fair. People can draw the comparison, but it's unfair not to, I think, acknowledge the fact that they haven't had the community transmission that we've had, and it's not a point of pride. It's just a fact. And trying to compare the two is not the same. I've seen all this commentary about, oh well, under our settings they'd be in lockdown. No, they wouldn't, because they've not had the community transmission we've had. So we are different, and you've got to have settings that marry up with that difference. Otherwise, it's not a strategy. It's just a plan of hope, but false hope. So those numbers need to be quite low, and common sense tells you if you ask our contact tracers to win an unfair fight, well then they won't. But if you say, okay, here are the numbers, they're down to as low as they can be. It's a big team. It's on the current performance, really clearly, they are hitting their targets. Can they do even better again? Well, they're all looking to try to. We're all trying to do that. But it's got to be a fair fight. If you say go and chase 5,000 people a day in cases and close contacts, very few jurisdictions can do that, if any. Brett might want to add to my answer.
It's true. It's true that neither restrictions are a substitute for contact tracing, and contact tracing is not a substitute for restrictions where they're required. They do seem like small numbers, but they are the numbers that essentially every state and territory in Australia got to when they lifted to their next stage. So they seem small, but that's the kind of level that you need not to have this escape you. South Korea went months, 3-4 months, single-digit numbers. They're widely known to have superb contact tracing internationally. But when they got to a point where they had a super-spreading event or had transmission in a population that they weren't able to track so easily, they've gone to restrictions. They have closed schools, they have stopped mass gatherings, and they have put mandatory masks in place across the country. Because it escaped them. They got to that level. So the numbers seem low in terms of the threshold, but that's the threshold that makes this a sustainable level to manage ongoing and to give us the chance of stopping community transmission as well.
And on that, the last step is no cases for 14 days. And you both said that there's going to be outbreaks, that this virus, this isn't an elimination strategy, this is aggressive suppression. So given all that, how actually obtainable is 14 days with no cases by the end of November?
Well, I think we'll see when we get there. If we're on track, if we see days and days with 0 cases, if we see from our sewage surveillance that it's just not being picked up across the board, then it'll be pretty clear that it's a feasible strategy and that it's one that's worth pursuit of. But if we have very low numbers and they are stubborn and persistent and we cannot get rid of it otherwise, but we can keep them under control, then we'll carry on with that strategy. We don't want to make a choice that is infeasible that just means that we'll continue with restrictions that don't provide benefit, that only provide harms and challenges.
So we're at ones and twos, sorry, Nick. So if we're at ones and twos in that November month for 2 weeks, it just won't go to zero, but it's ones and twos. Could we take the last step?
I think so. I think whenever you see jurisdictions that are in the ones and twos that have days of zeros and they've got international travel closed off, then they almost invariably get to the point of zero transmission. So if we're there, it'll be pretty clear that we can take the next step.